human-led deforestation is linked to less rain in tropical rainforests, according to a new study published last month in the journal Nature. Large-scale cutting of trees in the Amazon and other rainforests could lead to declining agricultural yields, raise the risk of wildfires, and promote irregular precipitation patterns, scientists say. Robust forests help produce rainfall in a process called moisture recycling. Essentially, trees absorb rainwater and release its moisture back into the atmosphere, contributing to cloud formation and, consequently, more rain. By disrupting this process, deforestation has a far-reaching impact. The moisture can travel up to an average of 373 miles before falling as precipitation in regions downwind of the Amazon. For example, up to 70% of rain could come from the forest-driven cloud formation, per the paper. This means that when the region is deforested, downwind areas face arid, harsher climates. When we're removing trees, we're making the environment drier, and that lack of moisture that's the big cloud above those trees just disappears. Lead author Callum Smith, a deforestation researcher at the University of Leeds in England, tells NPR's Lauren Sommer and Sama Bahrain. The researchers examined precipitation and deforestation patterns in the Amazon rainforest, Congo Basin, and Southeast Asia, which hosts the Lucer ecosystem, a forested area of Indonesia. Using satellite data from 2003 to 2017, they identified significant drops in average rainfall in each of these regions. The impacts were visible even at small scales, but the most dramatic changes could be seen over wide areas. At the scale of about 15,500 square miles, scientists found that rainfall decreased 0.25 millimeters per month for every percentage point of forest loss. Importantly, the researchers demonstrate a correlation between rising human activity and decreases in local rainfall. This study reinforces the understanding that deforestation reduces rainfall, which reduces forest resilience and increases the risk of tipping points and negative impacts on local economic activities. Bernardo Flores, an ecosystem resilience researcher at the Federal University of Santa Catarina in Brazil, who was not involved with the study, tells Mungabe's Sarah Brown. Experts warn the Amazon is approaching a tipping point that will result in drier conditions, turning its leafy vegetation into a savanna. This would threaten the wildlife in the Amazon rainforest, which is one of the most biodiverse places on Earth, home to 1 in 10 of the planet's known species. The rainforest has been nicknamed the lungs of the planet for the way it sucks up vast amounts of carbon dioxide each year. But some dangerous changes are already occurring. The dry season in the southern Amazon is now 4 to 5 weeks longer than it was in 1970, says Carlos Nobre, an Earth system scientist who contributed to first identifying the Amazon's tipping point, to Mungabe. Once we deforest, we lose one of our greatest natural defenses in protecting ourselves from climate change. This is not only true for forests, but also other ecosystems, says Robin Averbeck, Forest Program Director at the Rainforest Action Network, to NPR. However, efforts to stop deforestation are complex. In the Congo Basin, for example, much of the forest loss is due to poor, small-scale farmers trying to survive. Francis Seymour, Senior Fellow at the nonprofit World Resources Institute, tells NPR it's important to distinguish corporations and governments engaging in deforestation practices for local communities who are trying to make a living. The impact on rainfall shown in this study could be an effective argument against deforestation for governments and companies cutting down rainforests. local benefit of keeping tropical forests standing for the people living nearby has important policy implications, Sundaland tells The Guardian. Brazil has worked to reduce the amount of deforestation in the Amazon since the early 2000s, wrote Jason Daly for Smithsonian Magazine in 2019. Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva led efforts to decrease deforestation when he served as president of Brazil from 2003 to 2010, but former President Jair Bolsonaro oversaw an increase in deforestation after he took office in 2019. On January 1, 2023, Lula was sworn into the presidency again, after running a campaign that focused on environmental preservation and increased protections for indigenous communities. Indigenous lands contain around 80% of Earth's biodiversity. The Amazon is important for everyone in the world, says florist to NPR. When humanity faces problems in the future that we now don't even imagine now, the solutions can come from the Amazon. On the southern crest of the unscathed Amazon rainforest, a storm inundates a wooden shack just off a sodden mud road. Inside, Antonio Bertola sits clutching a $1 beer under a painting of the Virgin Mary, his face ruddy and his clothes tatty from a lifetime of work on the land. The frontier town of Realidade is a mere speck on a changing map. To the north stretch hundreds of billions of trees and more than 1 million species never charted by man. To the south, the muddy trail of human conquest reaches back for centuries. In a bittersweet tone of voice, Bertola recounts how his family of migrants had hungered for prosperity, security and, most of all, land to call their own. 5 decades ago, Brazil incentivized millions of its people to colonize the Amazon. Today their logging yards, cattle enclosures and soy farms sit on the fringes of a vanishing forest. Powered by murky sources of capital and rising demand for beef, a violent and corrupt frontier is now pushing into indigenous land, national parks and one of the most preserved parts of the jungle. Brazil's new president, Jair Bolsonaro, an unapologetic cheerleader for the exploitation of the Amazon, has the colonists' backs. He sacked key environmental officials and slashed enforcement. His message: the Amazon is open for business. Since his inauguration in January, the rate of deforestation has soared by as much as 92%, according to satellite imaging. As human activity in the Amazon ramps up, its future has never been less clear. Scientists warn that decades of human activity and a changing climate has brought the jungle near a tipping point. The rainforest is so called because it's such a wet place, where the trees pull up water from the earth that then gathers in the atmosphere to become rain. That balance is upended by deforestation, forest fires, and global temperature rises. Experts warn that soon the water cycle will become irreversibly broken, locking in a trend of declining rainfall and longer dry seasons that began decades ago. At least half of the shrinking forest will give way to savanna. With as much as 17% of the forest lost already, scientists believe that the tipping point will be reached at 20% to 25% of deforestation, even if climate change is tamed. If, as predicted, global temperatures rise by 4 degrees Celsius, much of the central, eastern and southern Amazon will certainly become barren scrubland. At least 427 species of mammals live in the Amazon rainforest, but one now dominates in terms of raw numbers: the cow. Cattle farming accounts for up to 80% of deforested land. In 2018, Brazil exported some $6 billion worth of beef, more than any other country in history. While stringent supply chain standards make Europe a difficult market for Amazon producers, countries in Africa and Asia, particularly China, slaughterhouse in the state, without a problem. Slaughterhouses often turn a blind eye to the source of cattle that arrives via third parties, a state of affairs the owner of frigate, João Goncalves, happily admits exists. Striding confidently around his vast plant as a line of cow carcasses is gutted by white-clothed employees on his production line, Goncalves talks with a lifetime of certainty about the benefits of expansion into the Amazon. His slaughterhouse will soon be the biggest in Brazil, according to the company, killing a cow every 8 seconds. His company exports nearly 40,000 tons of beef each year to Hong Kong, Egypt, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Switzerland, and Denmark. Throughout the industry, accountability is scarce. The Brazilian company JBS, a global leader in beef production, has been fined millions of dollars for buying cattle from farms under embargo. American agribusinesses Bunge and Cargill are among the largest players in the export of 14.9 million tons of soy from the Amazon annually, used primarily as a livestock feed. They have also been fined millions for sourcing soy from off-limits areas. For at least some working in the Amazon, the environment is simply irrelevant. We came here to open up this region, so now let's leave it. It's not logical, is it? Asks Goncalves, the slaughterhouse owner. We came here to deforest, to clean, he adds. In the next 100 years, the Amazon will all be open. It's a matter of time, right? Yet the consequences are now becoming apparent even to some of Bolsonaro's supporters and União Bandeirantes. Oliveira, the rancher, says the stream at the bottom of his land has dried up. On the eastern edge of the Amazon, shrubland has emerged. And in deforested areas in the south, temperatures rose at more than double the global average. With tens of billions of trees already gone, the region is warming fast. Droughts and floods are more common, and the dry season has grown by 6 days per decade since 1980. Trees play a crucial role in putting water back into the atmosphere, and their absence means less rainfall and higher temperatures. Carlos Nobra and Thomas Lovejoy, leading authorities on the Amazon and climate change, believe all of it: deforestation, the fires lit by ranchers that spread hundreds of meters through forest, and the impact of global temperature rises, might soon push the rainforest past its tipping point. Current projections by the UN show the Earth heading for heating of up to 5 degrees Celsius this century, far higher than the 2 degrees Celsius assumed by Nobra's research. If that happens, that forest will be lost forever. In 10 or 20 years, we will make a final diagnosis, says Nobra. If this process continues, it becomes irreversible. The forces set in play in the Amazon could have serious global consequences. The forest stores up to 120 billion metric tons of carbon, equivalent to almost 12 years of global emissions at current rates. If cleared, much of that will go into the atmosphere. That alone could push the global climate beyond safe limits. The Amazon tipping point could also lead to a cascade of other potential climate tipping points. Forest dieback is strongly interconnected with other phenomena such as the melting of the Greenland ice sheet, which would cause sea levels to rise, and the degradation of frozen soil in the Arctic known as the permafrost, which would release greenhouse gases held in the ice as well as long-dormant diseases. Scientists believe that these changes combined could result in runaway global warming that humans would find impossible to reverse. To avoid the worst-case scenario, the heart of the Amazon must be spared. Although 19.8% of the 1.5 million square mi of the Brazilian rainforest has been conquered, mostly along its south and east, swaths of the west and center remain intact. But that might soon change. From the vanquished terrain of Rondônia, a decaying highway roves north into the forest. The BR-319 bisects the Purus-Madeira Basin, one of the most preserved parts of the forest, where wildlife such as nocturnal two-toed sloths, woolly monkeys, and teju lizards live undisturbed. The military inaugurated the highway in 1973 to connect Porto Velho, the capital of Rondônia, with Manaus, the largest city in the Amazon. Yet within a few years, the 550-mile road fell into disrepair, reclaimed by grass and weeds. Jaguars and anacondas would cross the asphalt, flecked with meter-wide potholes and rusting road signs. Now the BR-319 is stirring again. On this road lies Realidade, which frontiersman Bertola has called home for the past 6 years. There, the lumberyards are opening fast and the telltale fishbone tracks already mark the jungle. Today, Realidade has 21 evangelical churches and 3 chainsaw repairmen. It is a harsh life in the midst of the forest. The newly arrived face the threats of malaria, deadly snakes, and persistent torrential rain. At times it feels like the forest is fighting back against the invasion. Everyone who comes up this road comes with a dream to find wealth, Bertola says with a sigh. Here, they only find suffering. But we do not desist. Bertola, like around 5,000 fellow travelers in recent years, moved in anticipation that the BR-319 would be repaved. But, despite much debate, nothing was done, and the road deteriorated. In July, Bolsonaro committed to repaving the highway with all certainty. But paving the road will transform the geography of deforestation by creating easy access to an area of forest bigger than Germany and Holland combined, according to Philip Fernside, a professor at the National Institute of Amazonian Research. Fernside co-authored a recent study that shows paving the road and another highway, the AM364, would lead to a 277% increase in deforestation in the region by 2050. This highway will accelerate us toward the tipping point because it cuts in half a very rich water basin and an area of high biological value, says Ricardo Mello, head of the World Wildlife Fund's Amazon program. But if the worst happens, it will be felt first by those forging livelihoods on the frontier. The decline in rainfall would parch farmland and cause widespread drought. Lower river levels would have a knock-on effect on boat transport, the fishing industry, and hydroelectric power generation. If the tipping point is reached, the Amazon's economy would be largely destroyed. But the wheels of expansion continued turning unabated. In February, near the foot of the BR-319, not far from where the asphalt turns to dust, the piercing sound of drills rings out over the forest. The metal frame of a new slaughterhouse is already taking shape next to the road. In the Carapunas Reserve, the once distant hum of chainsaws and gunshots grows louder. Katika worries every day about the future. The invaders, she says, do not understand that they are in a place that is not their own. But it is the prospects facing her grandchildren that worry her most. She cannot imagine a future for them without the forest. The tribal lands are her world, she says. As the sun glows through the branches in a clearing near her village, and spider monkeys scamper in the canopy above, her eyes remain alive with defiance. If I die, she says, I die here.
Nature. The word nature is a commonly used word. This word is used in a variety of contexts. Perhaps the most important reference is the multiple species of plants, animals, wildlife, and all that the earth contains from topography such as mountains, valleys, beaches, and seas, and forests. The beauty of nature. The nature of man is characterized by its beauty resulting mainly from the wonderful diversity of living organisms that exist in various parts of the earth, as well as the unique terrain of mountains, water, plateaus, and forests. Each of these features is distinguished by a special beauty that distinguishes it from other terrain, and this great diversity gave people wide spaces to seek calm, tranquility, and tranquility. Man by nature is a creature eager to taste beauty, and there is nothing more beautiful than nature. The manifestations of the beauty of nature. For the beauty of nature are many manifestations. Wherever a person turns his face, he will inevitably find a manifestation of these appearances. Perhaps the most striking of these is the unique diversity in the colors around us, which created a wonderful natural painting. Other manifestations include variations in sizes, shapes, even among the creatures of the same species. On the other hand, one of the greatest manifestations of nature's beauty is the beautiful smells of certain creatures, such as flowers, and certain kinds of fruits, especially citrus, which is accompanied by seasons and certain times, like the smell of the earth after the rain. The beauty of nature around us. The beauty of nature around us is one of the greatest blessings of God on us. This beauty allows us to choose places and many destinations for the sake of rest, recreation, and the best of times. The beauty of nature has always been the first inspiration for artists and creators around the world. This is evidenced by the vast number of works of art, poetry, and music that have attracted people around the world, and which revolve around the beauty and charm of nature. The beauty of nature is an important source of income for many countries of the world. Natural places are a tourist attraction that helps countries to improve their economic level, and thus emerged many of the areas that are famous for their natural beauty unspeakable. The most prominent of these areas, the Amazon River, the Dead Sea, the Jita Grotto, Mount Teple, the Puerto Princesa River, the Iguazu Falls, and others. A global competition to select the 7 natural wonders has been held, and perhaps the most notable achievement of this list is the global spotlight on some areas that have not been so popular, thus contributing to a greater number of visitors than ever before. I declare this world is so beautiful that I can hardly believe it exists. The beauty of nature can have a profound effect upon our senses, those gateways from the outer world to the inner, whether it results in disbelief in its very existence, as Emerson notes, or feelings such as awe, wonder, or amazement. But what is it about nature and the entities that make it up that cause us, oftentimes unwillingly, to feel or declare that they are beautiful? One answer that Emerson offers is that the simple perception of natural forms is a delight. When we think of beauty in nature, we might most immediately think of things that dazzle the senses, the prominence of a mountain, the expanse of the sea, the unfolding of the life of a flower. Often it is merely the perception of these things itself which gives us pleasure, and this emotional or affective response on our part seems to be crucial to our experience of beauty. So in a way there is a correlate here to the intrinsic value of nature, Emerson says. The sky, the mountain, the tree, the animal, give us a delight in and for themselves. Most often, it seems to me, we find these things to be beautiful not because of something else they might bring us, a piece of furniture, say, or a delicacy, to be consumed, but because of the way that the forms of these things immediately strike us upon observation. In fact, one might even think that this experience of beauty is one of the bases for valuing nature. Nature is valuable because it is beautiful. Emerson seems to think that beauty in the natural world is not limited to certain parts of nature to the exclusion of others. He writes that every landscape lies under the necessity of being beautiful, and that beauty breaks in everywhere. As we slowly creep out of a long winter in the Northeast, I think Emerson would find the lamentations about what we have endured to be misguided. The inhabitants of the city suppose that the country landscape is pleasant only half the year. To the attentive eye, each moment of the year has its own beauty, and in the same field it beholds, every hour, a picture which was never seen before, and which shall never be seen again. The close observer of nature sees a river in constant flux, even when the river's water is frozen and everything appears to be static and unchanging for a time. Nature can reveal its beauty in all places and at all times to the eye that knows how to look for it. We can hear Emerson wrangle with himself on this very point in the words of this journal entry. At night I went out into the dark and saw a glimmering star and heard a frog, and nature seemed to say, "Well, do not these suffice?" Here is a new scene, a new experience. Ponder it, Emerson, and not like the foolish world, hanker after thunders and multitudes and vast landscapes, the sea or Niagara. So if we're sympathetic to the idea that nature, or aspects of it, are beautiful, we might ask ourselves why we experience nature in this way. Emerson says that nature is beautiful because it is alive, moving, reproductive. In nature we observe growth and development in living things, contrasted with the static or deteriorating state of the vast majority of that which is man-made. More generally, he writes, we ascribe beauty to that which has no superfluous parts, which exactly answers its end, which stands related to all things. He cites natural structures as lacking superfluities, an observation that in general has been confirmed by the advancement of biology. Furthermore, he says that whether talking about a human artifact or a natural organism, any increase of ability to achieve its end or goal is an increase in beauty. So in Emerson we might find the resources for seeing evolution and the drive to survive as a beautiful rather than an ugly process, governed by laws that tend to increase reproductive fitness and that we can understand through observation and inquiry. And lastly, Emerson points to the relation between what we take to be an individual and the rest of nature as a quality of the beautiful. This consists in the power to suggest relation to the whole world, and so lift the object out of a pitiful individuality. In nature one doesn't come across individuals that are robustly independent from their environment, rather things are intimately interconnected with their surroundings in ways that we don't fully understand. Nothing is quite beautiful alone, nothing but is beautiful in the whole. All of these qualities of beauty seem to go beyond the mere impression of sensible forms that we started with, and what they require is what also served as the basis of truth and goodness in nature.